welcome to another episode of Freshly Baked with TMC. I'm your co-host, Eric MacPherson, alongside my brother, my good friend, my business partner, Chad Stam out in Boulder, Colorado. What's up, Chad?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm doing pretty good. Feeling positive today. There's a lot of positive things to talk about.
I agree with you. I'm feeling pretty good right now. Feeling pretty positive. Seeing some good changes. I was on a webinar this week that was presented by Mopsy and Natham and some other folks, and ITR Economics was on, and he had a really positive outlook for what's going to happen once this is over. I mean, obviously, a lot of this is predicated on getting over this COVID hurdle that we're all going through, and we will get past it. There's no doubt. But his outlook was positive, and I feel like I've taken that away as well. I will say, though, there's something that I just found out about an hour ago that is really disturbing to me. My favorite bar in the world, the Kettle of Fish in New York City, right near Christopher and 7th Street, very famous bar. It used to be on McDougal. Bob Dylan used to go there, Jack Kerouac, a very famous writer's bar. It is now also a Green Bay Packers bar. They've started a GoFundMe because they might be closing down.
Jesus.
So they just released a GoFundMe, and actually I'm going to pull it up right now to see where we're at. As of about an hour and a half ago, they were at like $43,000. They're trying to raise 100. But within 5 minutes they had raised another $1,000. So I would urge anyone to go to GoFundMe and check out Save the Kettle, because this is a true treasure of a drinking hole. It's a dive bar, a Green Bay Packers bar. Aaron Rodgers goes there sometimes, but it's also a historical treasure as well. And if that place closes down, I'm going to be heartbroken because of COVID.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that, and I'm sure our Brian Shearer will help out with that any way he can, huh?
We've already been talking about it.
Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on here in terms of continuing on with COVID and dealing with COVID and this Black Lives Matter movement. And I think one of the things we're going to get into in this episode, which really excited about our guest today, but talking about significance and a life of significance and what we do here at TMC and from an inbound marketing perspective, we always talk about creating brands of significance. How much does emotion need to be pulled into content today? Our Gabby Hoover wrote a great piece, and we'll drop the link in here too for those that are watching and in the podcast link as well on the podcast page. But how much does emotion need to be brought into content today, in your opinion, Chad?
Content is only good if it contains emotion. So I think it doesn't matter when or where. Emotion always needs to be in content, because if you're writing stuff that's flat, that doesn't contain heart or emotion or the drive, the reason you have for sitting down to write it in the first place, if it doesn't have that, it's going to suck, period.
No, absolutely. And I think that also gets into how does we deal a lot with manufacturing, right? And just a little tidbit of inbound marketing stuff that we'll talk about here in this episode. It really is going to come down to what kind of content that your employees, that your team, and that your customers are putting out. And that's the kind of content right now that's resonating across the board, whether it's social media or reading. And it's called user-generated content, right? There's a term for it, UGC, user-generated content. And that seems to be what's authentic out there. And that's what people want in terms of authenticity and so forth. And we just got to think about ways to do that through photos, through video. Well, we've seen so much great video content coming out from folks we work with or that we know, that they're just doing it. They're going all in and doing it and just creating video that tells a story, that tells a little bit about who they are. Yeah, they'll talk about product a little bit, but people want to connect with the emotional side of folks more today than they did, I think, back, previous to March.
Well, authenticity is the right word there. And if you even look at some of the big brands that we all think about, the Coca-Colas of the world, go look at their ads, go look at some of their commercials, thumb through a magazine, see what they're putting out there. A lot of it has an element of user generated, even though they may be paying their agency of record millions of dollars to come up with these campaigns and to actually create them and execute them. A lot of these campaigns have unprofessional looks to them, almost mimicking UGC. And whether it's actually getting your customers to shoot it or getting an ad agency to sort of replicate something that's user generated, it's definitely a trend out there. And I think the reason that the reason that it resonates is the authenticity, like you're saying.
Yep. Yep. And then you got to figure out how to use it, right? How to best use it and so forth. And there's so many different ways to use it today. But,
Well, it
you
also
know,
drives engagement too. When you have
yep,
your customers that are participating, it gets them thinking about you and your brand, and it gets them involved in those efforts.
absolutely. Well, we're seeing a lot of positive things happening in the space in terms of content that's being generated and engagement and everything else. And, you know, speaking on authenticity, man, I'm really excited to bring on and introduce our guest today, Salo Cooper, who is the corporate chef for Jail to Jobs, jailtojobs.com. That's actually be our first chef that we've had on.
Yeah, that's right.
So, first chef, from what we know, and we don't know a whole lot about him yet, but from what we know, I mean, he had a pretty rough life in and out of jail for most of his life. And there's this, you know, we got introduced to this jail to jobs.com, just jail to jobs organization by our creative folks over, you know, Stephen Burton. And, you know, just learning about what these folks are doing, and this is out of Texas. But to hear about what they're doing to help, you know, the youth that is just in this, stuck in getting in trouble, stuck in and out of the jail system, and helping them actually develop a career, and specifically in this case with, you know, Chef Saulo, uh, developing a culinary career and teaching them how to do that. And there's probably so much more to it that we're going to dive into, I imagine, with Saulo. But super exciting to bring him on here.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about some positive stuff.
Let's go. Well, hey, Saulo Cooper,
Yeah.
Saulo. I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, in English you are.
So if I was speaking Spanish,
Yeah.
how would I say it?
Saulo.
Saulo.
Like
Saulo.
Paulo, but Saulo.
Saulo.
Yeah.
Saulo Cooper.
Yeah.
How are you, man? Thank you.
I'm doing well.
Thank you for joining us. How are you today, man? What's going on in Texas?
Right now, just kind of dealing with what everybody's probably dealing with, you know, stay at home order, staying safe,
Yes.
trying to get conscious of the next person. And at the same time, try to keep it moving for those that are less fortunate. Because if you're feeling it and you have a good 9 to 5 and you're kind of comfortable, those that are less fortunate are probably feeling the pressure a little bit more. So we're just trying to find creative ways to keep it moving at the same time.
Absolutely, man. So you are the executive chef in the culinary program at Jail to Jobs, right?
I am the
So tell us a little bit about the story. How did that all come about?
Well, just to keep it simple, I've been doing the chef thing for about 10 years. Prior to that, I kind of, I lived a life of crime, to be honest with you. I got out of prison in 2009. I decided to turn my life around. Went and got a job, fake it till you make it, and just looked up, what quick kitchen equipment is and what it does, and went and filled out my first application. And I said, hey, I know a wood burning stove, I know a flat top grill, which I didn't know anything about those things.
Sure.
But I was confident in my desire to put my hands in and go to work and to make a change. And so with that, I was able to grow, become an executive chef, sous chef, worked under some great chefs at the West End and other places like that, high-end places. And started doing restaurant consulting, helping people open up restaurants, mom and pops. I had some front of the house experience prior to me going to prison. And then helping them to just kind of, streamline, become profitable, order guides, things of that nature, dining room setup. And then one day I had opened up a restaurant called Sauce Odyssey here. And I had started doing some chaplain work for Jail to Jobs. And I was finishing up my contract with them. I'm like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go to another restaurant and help them And I was like, man, how can I help kids and give back? You know, I have an X on my back. I'm a felon. Uh, and it was like a no brainer. It was an epiphany. I was like, whoa, there's nothing but felons in the kitchen. And they're able to rise above the station and they're able to change their trajectory through this format. Why are we not doing this? And so I got with Chris Haskins, who's the founder of Gel to Jobs. I said, look, let's start a culinary program. And he's like, we're a nonprofit. And I said, yes, but we can do it because this is what's going to give kids an ability to hold their head up. You know, as a felon and coming from, you know, a very trauma-filled life myself, I was able to feel proud about something. And then the food, people were eating it, they were amazed. And it's such a self-esteem builder. And so we went with it and we started and we got a couple students and then we started catering and the catering took off and then the story became greater because we've seen the success in the kids. You're talking 15, 16-year-old kids, high trauma, smile because they made a beurre blanc sauce and then someone ate it and they came in and gave them a hug. I mean, the walls being torn down just through a plate of food is just, we couldn't measure that success. It just happened. And then, so it's continuing to grow and give the people the skill set that they need to be able to change their trajectory in life and get some prestige, some respect. And so that's where we're at right now. And so we're thriving and we're always looking for more opportunities to expand because when we do so, we can affect more. Unfortunately, we're limited to the amount of students, but we have students just clamoring to get in because of the success rate. And so we're going to get there though. So I know that to be true.
I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but I don't want to get ahead of myself here. I feel like we need to hear a little bit about Jail to Jobs and just kind of give us the background on the program itself and what the intentions are and what the motivations are and what the processes are. And then there's so many questions I'd like to ask you about food and go down that path. But I feel like we need to get the nuts and the bolts of the program first.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, so Jail to Jobs was founded about 10 years ago. And it was based on a need. Chris Haskins, he was going into juveniles to kind of minister because juveniles don't have a chaplain, someone to pray for someone or even just mentor. They don't have that like the adult jails. So he's like, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to go in jail and start connecting with kids, you know, and it wasn't all about religion. It was about connection. And so went in, started Jail to Jobs. And it started off as a Bible study. Then the next step was, hey, how these kids are going home and who's taking care of them afterwards? Who's connecting with them? And we're talking about the worst of the worst. We're not talking people who are skipping school and things of that nature. We're talking anywhere from robbery to assault, these type of kids, which would be considered nobodies in our society. And so he started Jail to Jobs. He's like, what can bring kids to our program that is different than any other program? Money. So let's start paying our kids. And so they started paying kids to show up and be part of the program. And at that point, there was really nothing. They started woodworking, and then woodworking transformed into landscaping, and then landscaping transformed into construction. And so all these arms developed, and then there was just this ability to mentor kids 25 plus hours a week, where typically some of these programs are only 1 hour, 2 hours a week. And we have that 25 hours a week, and we get to breathe into them. We get to a lot of stuff comes out in a work environment, and they saw the natural rehabilitation and opportunities that open themselves up through this work element. And they said, you know what, this is working. And so a lot of these kids being impoverished, that paycheck is the hook. Some of these kids who commit the crimes, they really do say, hey, I was trying to help my mom. We have 4 kids at home. We have no dad, or vice versa. And that the story was, you know, we're doing bad. And so I needed to do something. And so with that said, it continued to evolve. And so the ministry part of Jail to Jobs, as far as what we do in the community, is we take at-risk kids that nobody wants. The judges don't want them. They're repeat offenders. Maybe their parents don't want them. and we want them. And we give them a place. They come to our transition center. The only qualification you have is if you have been to jail or had a negative contact with police, law enforcement. We work in conjunction with law enforcement, but that we want to reach this ilk of people, because recidivism and continued crime, if you will, repeat offenders, is a blight on this nation. It's a blight on Texas economically. Texas spends $5 billion a year on a system that fails 78% of the time. And so we're attacking it through relationship. And that's what changed, because some people, they put them on probation, but the kids don't even have a home to go to that's stable to continue to meet those needs. Or they may be an addict, or they have high trauma, sexual abuse. We get a lot of prostitution girls in my culinary program that were part of sex rings. Like, I have a 15-year-old girl right now who was in the sex slave industry for 2 years, and was found at one of these sex slave shelters, and now we have her. But these are the backstories. So how you give probation to a kid that has no foundation, and then say, hey, you have to meet these requirements or go back to jail. And 70% of the time, it's go back to jail. Right. And so we decided to do something different.
That's fantastic. And it wanted me to ask a follow-up question here in terms of the money. And I think that's a really important aspect of this, because we obviously live in a country where our penal system is economically based. It's a for-profit system.
I'm glad you're bold enough to say that.
Oh, absolutely. It's a major issue. And when you have people making money on prisons, then obviously you follow the money. There's reasons to put people in prisons, which leads to discrimination. It leads to all these other things, right?
Yeah.
Is there an element of this, though, where you can sort of circumnavigate some of that, like in the logo that you guys have, the jail to jobs, and if those of you who can see this on YouTube, it's basically the word jail with an arrow to the word jobs. Is there another aspect of this where maybe there's another arrow before the jail, where it goes around the jail, where you guys are actually finding and cultivating these kids before they get to the jail process, before they enter the prison system? Is there an element of the program that actually does that and tries to vet them out before?
Yeah, and that happens, and we're the arrow. That's how we see ourselves, as the arrow. That's the program in itself. But how that happens is just a small glimpse. So when I got out of prison, I was able to change my life and turn my life around. My brother, who is the director now of Jail to Jobs, he paroled to my house after a lifetime of prison. My brother was convicted of capital murder, and he was able to get out and parole to my house. And because of my stability, I was able to change his stability, his life trajectory, and give him a foundation. And then he became gainfully employed. And then his life just took off. He just got married and purchased his own home as a violent offender, and has dinner engagements with the commissioner, with the mayor. But that's how we do the before the jail. These kids are going back to their house, and they have little brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and cousins, and the parents see something in these kids. And just that positive turnaround, it helps other people within their circle, their fingerprint of life, change too. The ripple effect is unmeasurable, but we see little brothers coming into the program a year later, and and a friend of a friend that was in part of the program, and he's successful now. And so they're not going to jail, and they're saying, hey, but I need this type of support, a family. And we're like, we're here for you. And because once you've gone to Jail to Jobs, anything that's part of you is now part of us. And that's one of our signature, if you will, hallmarks. We are about being with you. We're about, if you fail, we fail. If you fail, we're there to pick you up. If we take all the small wins and we help you develop that sense of security and self-accomplishment that everybody needs to kind of change where they started from and move into a better direction.
It's incredible.
I think we call that productive citizen. but I don't like that word. But go ahead.
And so how many there, what was the number of jobs that were created by your organization last year, roughly? I mean, I saw a number of around 230. Is that?
Yeah, it's on average between, we're on course. I mean, with the COVID thing, it kind of slumped a little, but I would say 240 jobs. We have a lot of successful placements just within the culinary program. We have at least 40 successful placements a year. And just imagine multiplying that in every family unit. When they go back, they're making a change for their family. So it's not just their individual lives, but it's their families' lives, their little brothers and their sisters.
Impact is well beyond, you know, the number of jobs. How, you know, we talked about the effect of COVID over the past couple months. We've also had Black Lives Matter movement and you know, the civil unrest with the police and everything that's going on from a society perspective across not only the United States, across the globe. What impacts are you guys seeing from that perspective of this, you know, of the movement that's been going on over the past, what now, 2 months?
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. And I'm going to say that from this perspective. I'm from the streets. I was a gangbanger. My brother was a gangbanger. We had negative run-ins with the law enforcement due to our behaviors and choices. Some of it not because of our behavior and choices, but I really don't want to get into that aspect of it. But the kids we deal with are gangbangers. They're from the streets. I want to say a shout out to my boy Anthony, who just got killed. He was in part of the program. His funeral's tomorrow. He's a black young man, and he was shot in a fight. And so the people that we deal with are the streets, as are known today. That's who we deal with, like roughshod, you know, just rough cut, roughneck people. And so with that said, the Black Lives Matter and what happened that sparked all that was felt by our kids. And because we are pro law enforcement, we are working with the community. And I'll stand by this, not every police officer is a bad police officer. And we have a lot of police officers that come to our transition homes and they talk to the kids and they care about the community and they're not racially profiling, but it set us back. It set us back with our kids, and we had to find a way to draw them back in because we may have been viewed as, you know, part of that system that's a little bit broken, that's broken because of our tone prior to what sparked all this. Our tone was, hey, you know, police officers can care, do care. And so it was a challenge for us to continue to work in a good space, but acknowledge that Black lives do matter. Me being an African-American male, dealing with a lot of things coming up too. I came up in the 80s, and that was, you know, for, you know, a Black man and living in Fargo, North Dakota for a while, it was rough. And so with that said, we find a way to take that movement because we don't want to adopt something that completely doesn't fit our ideals and our trajectory. We don't want to marry it with that because we're something completely different, but we also recognize it. And so we found a way to reach out to our African-American kids, our Black kids, because that's what's needed. And I think it's a breath of fresh air for them, that people are paying attention now. And it'll help us do the work that we need, because Black on Black crime is an issue, you know, and it needs a cultural change, but bringing attention to it helps that change come about. And so for us, we support Black Lives Matter, and verbally, our founder just made that decision, and he's Caucasian, and they're doing a lot of soul searching, and my hat's off to them, because they're doing some soul searching on where they may have been a misstep, and how can we get closer to becoming more well-rounded. And I think as individuals, people, whether you're Black, white, Mexican, Chinese, Indian, it doesn't matter. We all have to take that journey also. It's our responsibility.
Yeah. Amen.
And so that's just kind of, it was challenging for us because we have to be the mediator. That's who we are. We're the in between from the streets to change, and you can't have change without the current system that's been put in place, and that's law enforcement, and that's becoming a responsible citizen. And so we have to help them with that transition on what that means. And so I think we've done that fairly well. You know, hats off to my brother, Hedemius Cooper, who keeps a relationship with the police officers. We go speak at academies with graduating classes, and you're talking about two violent offenders, me and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Not with no just drug cases. We're talking, you know, and I'm not being proud, but it's a testament to what, you know, one, I'm going to say this boldly, God can do, and two, what your efforts can do, despite a society that says you can't. And so that's more important for us. So, yeah.
You mentioned
Awesome.
something I think that's really important, and I think it's probably the linchpin of this entire thing. And it's the fact that finally there are voices that are being heard. People are listening, people are paying attention. And I guess my question would be, how do you have that conversation with the kids that come through your program? How do you initiate those conversations and give them reassurance that you're actually listening to them? And what are those lessons that you've learned in those conversations that all of us across the spectrum of humanity and culture can take away in our day-to-day interactions with people? Because I feel like that's what we all need. We all need to listen to each other more and sometimes just shut the hell up, you know?
Well, you've said it. We rarely, when coming in contact with kids with our program, they remind you, they're coming pretty rough. A lot of them homeless, 70% of them homeless, living in some type of shelter or fostered out. We listen. That's the key. I mean, there's this thing called, it's called a false leader. And it's someone who, when they get into a situation where they're talking to someone, they want to answer all their problems. And so in doing so, they never address why the person came to them in the first place. And it's called an imposter leader. Listening, just sitting down and listening and say, man, I understand, brother. I understand, sister. I know what you're going through. And you will be surprised the trust level that is developed, whether you're white, whether you're Asian. When you just listen and say, man, you know, and you're sympathetic to what they're talking about, I think that is the key to reaching people on a level where they can receive some of your experience. They can receive some of your wisdom, some of your knowledge. And so for us, that is our primary tool, is we listen to these kids. And because every story is different, and we don't group them together, and every trauma is different. And we want them to know that they're special, and before we kind of start trying to breathe life into them. And so a lot of it's listening at first. I think as a nation, we need to do that. But we don't have the time. Sometimes we don't even listen to our own kids. We don't got time for that. You know, I mean, I'll be real. I'm gonna keep it 100. You know, life moves fast.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have time for those small things. And you know, a stranger or someone that's come inside your pathway, I don't believe in coincidence. We need to take the time to listen and engage.
Oh, and all of a sudden COVID hits. All of a sudden we start slowing down a little bit. We're forced to. All of a sudden we start to acknowledge a little bit more about what's important. All of a sudden we have a little bit more time to be thinking, to be recognizing, to be aware of what's going on. And then here we are, right? I mean, we're at a really pivotal time in what's going on in society right now, man.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I said this at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to still speak it because no matter what's happening, I believe this has come true. But I said at the beginning of the year, 2020 is going to be the year of perfect perspective. And it's going to set up the stage for a new direction in people's lives, a more clearer direction. And I don't think that was just an individual thing. I think as a nation, we're going to have clear vision on what the new course of life is going to be moving forward. And unfortunately, you know, COVID is a sad thing, and my family's personally been affected by it. But all these things, I can see the good. I can see a clearer path for society to take, because the path we were on wasn't doing good to nobody. As far as your relationship with your kids and family, I'm sure that everybody's drawn closer to each other, and friendships are more, you know, held close to the bosom like it should be. And so, that is a good positive approach and opinion on that.
Wow, just incredible stuff. Just such an inspiring story about someone who overcame the odds and is just changing the world around him. I mean, what a remarkable human being. Just so you all know, this will be a 2-part episode. So this concludes part 1 of our chat with Jail to Jobs executive chef, Saulo Cooper. As we sign off, I just want to bring up Jail to Jobs organization once again. I urge you to visit their website. It's jail2jobs.com. That's jailtojobs.com. Dig deeper into their organization. They're doing so many amazing good things for their community in Texas and helping these kids turn their lives around. You can head to their website, learn more about how you can donate, partner, or even volunteer. So thanks everybody for listening. Man, I know we're all in an emotional, it's a very emotional time, but hope everyone has a healthy and happy weekend. Keep doing good things. Love more. Peace.